I never imagined one conversation, just one quiet moment, could shatter everything I believed about myself, about my son, about loyalty. It's strange how life can feel completely normal 1 second, and then, suddenly, everything flips upside down, leaving you lost, confused, wondering how you even got there. That evening was supposed to be special. My son Jake was finally getting recognition at his job. I remember feeling so proud, but deep inside, I was struggling. My husband had left me months ago, and ever since, I'd felt invisible, forgotten, like I didn't matter to anyone. At Jake's office party, everyone was smiling, laughing, having a great time. But me, I just stood there, awkwardly holding a glass, feeling completely out of place. Then Mark, Jake's boss, noticed me. He walked over, introduced himself, and for the first time in months, someone actually saw me, really saw me. It felt good. Too good. After a few minutes, he leaned in, voice softer, serious, and asked if we could speak privately. My heart skipped. Why privately? Something inside me warned that I should say no, but curiosity pushed me forward. Soon, we stood alone in a quiet room, away from everyone else. The air suddenly felt heavy, thick with tension. Mark looked at me, eyes deep, vulnerable, intense, and then he said something I never expected, something that changed everything. Trust me, you're not prepared for what he said and what happened next, and honestly, neither was I. So please, take a moment now and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, because you're about to discover just how deeply hidden secrets can change lives forever. I stood there frozen, my heart beating so loudly I was sure Mark could hear it. He held my gaze for a long moment before finally speaking. "Angela," he said softly, almost cautiously, "I've noticed how uncomfortable you've looked tonight. I just wanted you to know. You don't have to feel invisible here. I see you." His words took me by surprise. It wasn't what I expected. They were simple, yet they touched something deep inside me, something raw and vulnerable. I felt tears sting my eyes, embarrassment and relief mixed together. For so long, I'd felt unseen, ignored. Just hearing those words from someone, anyone, felt like rain after a long drought. I looked away quickly, afraid he'd see too much in my eyes. "Thank you," I managed quietly. He moved a bit closer, not too close, just enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. "I mean it," he continued gently. "You raised a wonderful son. Jake is driven, talented. He clearly gets that from you." I smiled awkwardly, still unsure how to handle genuine kindness. Mark wasn't anything like I'd imagined my son's boss would be. He was older, probably late 40s like me, but carried himself with a quiet confidence I hadn't seen in a long time. His voice was reassuring, almost comforting, yet there was something beneath the surface, something slightly dangerous, a hidden intensity that drew me in without meaning to. We stood in silence for a moment, the quiet humming between us, heavy and charged. He broke it first, smiling softly. "Listen, Angela. Jake mentioned your divorce. I know it's not my place, but I went through it myself. It's lonely. It can make you feel worthless, forgotten. But trust me, you're not." Hearing him say that out loud made my chest ache. It was exactly how I'd felt, exactly the wound I'd been trying to hide. Without thinking, I whispered, "Sometimes it feels like I've lost myself completely." Mark nodded gently, understanding etched deeply in his eyes. "I know. I've been there. And it took me a long time to remember who I was. But you know, it gets easier when you let someone in." His words hung between us, charged with something unspoken. I knew I should step back, put distance between us. But part of me desperately wanted to stay, to keep feeling noticed and heard, even if just for another moment. I glanced toward the door, suddenly remembering Jake, feeling a sharp pang of guilt. Mark followed my eyes and seemed to sense my unease. "You're worried about Jake," he said quietly, carefully reading me. "He admires you so much. Talks about you constantly. But I see the sadness behind your eyes. That sadness, it doesn't have to stay." I looked up again, heart racing, torn between relief and fear. How do you even begin to move forward? I asked softly, almost pleadingly, surprising myself by being so open with him. He took a slow breath, stepped a little closer. Now, I could almost feel his heartbeat matching mine. Sometimes, he said in a low voice, his eyes locked on mine, you just take one small risk. Something completely for yourself. I wanted desperately to step away, to break this tension, to retreat safely into the loneliness I knew. But instead, I found myself rooted there, searching his eyes, feeling every barrier within me weakening. Angela, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper now, you deserve to feel alive again. Without realizing it, my breath quickened, my pulse racing. The air between us was thick, impossible to ignore. His hand moved gently toward mine, brushing it lightly. His touch sent electric currents through me, igniting feelings I thought had died long ago. I don't know, I whispered shakily, my voice barely audible. This feels wrong. He nodded slowly, respectfully, but his eyes stayed locked with mine, filled with a quiet intensity. I understand. But does feeling right always have to mean denying yourself happiness? Even for one moment? Everything in me screamed to run away, to stop this. Yet another part, a deep, desperate part, ached to stay. For once, to allow myself to feel alive, valued, even desired. And in that silence, as my doubts and fears battled with my needs and desires, I looked at him again. He didn't move, didn't pressure. He just waited, patiently, genuinely seeing me. I hesitated once more, my heartbeat pounding painfully. Finally, trembling slightly, I took a step closer. That single step felt monumental, like crossing some invisible line from which there was no return. Mark watched me carefully, eyes gentle, almost cautious. He reached up slowly, softly touching my cheek. I closed my eyes at the sensation, nearly overwhelmed. You're beautiful, he whispered, so sincerely it nearly broke me. You deserve to be happy. My heart raced. This could ruin everything. I breathed out shakily, the conflict inside me tearing my heart in two. He nodded, carefully pulling back, sensing my internal struggle. I won't force this, he said gently, respectful and compassionate. But Angela, when you're ready, I'm here. My mind was spinning. I turned away from him then, emotions swirling, guilt, excitement, fear, longing, all crashing against each other. I walked out of the room quickly, escaping back to the crowd, feeling shaken yet strangely alive. As I stood quietly by Jake, pretending nothing had happened, I could still feel Mark's gaze from across the room, gentle yet powerful, drawing me toward a decision I wasn't sure I was ready to make. That night, as I lay awake in my empty bed, thoughts racing endlessly, I felt something stir within me, something dangerous, something thrilling. I knew that line had been crossed. The boundary blurred. And I wondered, with equal parts dread and longing, what would happen next. The next morning, as sunlight spilled into my empty bedroom, I felt a strange mixture of dread and anticipation. Memories of Mark's gentle voice and comforting touch lingered, playing endlessly in my mind. I tried shaking the feeling away, telling myself that last night was just a vulnerable moment. Nothing more. But deep down, I knew something had changed. Days passed slowly, each filled with thoughts I struggled to bury. I went through the motions of daily life, preparing meals, cleaning the house, yet constantly haunted by Mark's eyes, his words, the way he made me feel seen for the first time in so long. Even at night, alone in the silence, I found myself replaying every detail of our encounter, wishing I could silence the whisper inside me that kept asking, what if? Then came another invitation. Jake casually mentioned another company gathering, a smaller, more intimate event. My stomach twisted instantly. He was excited, oblivious to the turmoil he'd sparked within me. I wanted desperately to refuse, to find any excuse not to go, yet somehow, almost despite myself, I heard my own voice saying yes. That evening, I stood staring at myself in the mirror, carefully applying makeup, wearing a dress I hadn't worn since before my divorce. I felt both hopeful and terrified. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Her eyes were brighter, filled with something dangerous, something daring. When Jake and I arrived at the event, I felt out of place again, painfully aware of how little I belonged there. Mark noticed immediately, his gaze softening as he approached us. Jake introduced us again casually, oblivious to the charged tension between his mother and boss. Mark shook my hand, his touch lingering a fraction too long. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to look away. Throughout the evening, I felt Mark's eyes on me, warm yet cautious, never crossing the line openly, always keeping a respectful distance. Still, his gaze spoke clearly, silently drawing me closer, daring me to follow my instincts rather than my fears. Eventually, Mark approached when Jake was deep in conversation elsewhere. His voice was gentle, quiet enough only for me to hear. "I'm glad you came," he said warmly, his tone friendly yet undeniably intimate. "Thank you," I answered softly, looking down at my drink, suddenly self-conscious. My heart raced uncontrollably. Honestly, I almost didn't. He smiled slightly, leaning a bit closer, his presence calming yet electrifying. "I understand. And if you ever want to talk, or just need someone to listen, I'm here." I looked into his eyes, searching for sincerity, finding it immediately. He seemed to genuinely care, yet behind that kindness was something deeper, something magnetic. "I appreciate that," I whispered quietly, feeling oddly brave. "It means a lot." Mark hesitated briefly, clearly weighing his words. Then he gently touched my arm, just enough to send sparks rushing through my veins, and asked, "Would it be inappropriate if I invited you out for coffee sometime? Just to talk?" My breath caught. I hesitated, every instinct warning me to politely decline. But a stronger impulse pushed me forward. "No," I said softly, surprising myself. "That would actually be nice." A gentle, genuine smile spread across his face. "Good," he said warmly. "I'm looking forward to it." As he walked away, leaving me standing there, my pulse pounding in my ears, I felt both exhilarated and terrified. I knew exactly how dangerous this was, Jake's boss, of all people, but for the first time in years, I felt a deep thrill of excitement. When Jake and I returned home later, he chatted happily about the event, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I listened quietly, hiding my internal struggle beneath nods and smiles, guilt gnawing sharply at the edge of my excitement. Days passed with anxious anticipation. Finally, one afternoon, Mark texted me a simple, casual message suggesting a cafe downtown. My heart raced as I replied, agreeing to meet him. I dressed casually, carefully choosing something simple yet flattering, trying desperately to convince myself it was only coffee, just harmless conversation. When I arrived at the cafe, Mark was already waiting, standing up quickly, greeting me with an easy smile that instantly soothed my nerves. We talked effortlessly, sharing stories about our pasts, our fears, our dreams. I found myself opening up to him about things I hadn't shared with anyone, not even Jake. Mark listened closely, fully engaged, empathetic and comforting. It felt incredible to be truly heard. Hours slipped by unnoticed until finally Mark leaned closer, his voice lowering slightly. "Angela," he said quietly, his eyes holding mine intently, "you have no idea how special you are. I just wish you could see yourself the way I see you." His words washed over me, warmth flooding my chest. "Mark, you don't even know me that well," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. He smiled softly, shaking his head. "I know enough to see someone who deserves more than loneliness. Someone who's spent too long being overlooked." My heart was pounding now, emotions threatening to spill over. I nodded slowly, overwhelmed. "I want to believe you," I admitted quietly. "But I'm scared. You're Jake's boss. This feels dangerous." Mark nodded understandingly, eyes sincere. "You're right. It's complicated. But sometimes the best things in life are complicated. I'm willing to handle it carefully if you are." Silence hung heavily between us. I felt torn, conflicted, yet strangely hopeful. Finally, almost surprising myself, I whispered softly, "Maybe we can try." Mark smiled gently, eyes filled with restrained excitement. "We'll take it slowly. Whatever you're comfortable with." As we parted ways that afternoon, his brief hug lingered warmly, holding promises of something meaningful yet forbidden. Driving home, my heart raced with equal parts fear and excitement. I'd crossed another line, one I never dreamed I would. Late that night, alone in bed, I replayed our conversation again and again. My thoughts tangled around Mark, Jake, loyalty, desire. I wondered desperately what would come next, knowing the risks, terrified of hurting my son, yet craving the possibility of feeling truly alive again. In the dark, conflicted silence, I finally admitted something I'd denied for far too long. I was already falling deeper than I'd intended, and there was no going back now. The days that followed were a quiet storm inside me. On the outside, everything looked the same. I still made coffee in the mornings, folded laundry, exchanged polite conversations with neighbors. I still listened to Jake talk about work over dinner, nodding and smiling as he mentioned Mark's name with admiration. But on the inside, I was spinning. Every mention of Mark made my stomach twist. Every casual reference to the office reminded me of what I was hiding, of what I was slowly becoming a part of. I told myself it was nothing. Just coffee. Just a few kind words from someone who understood loneliness. But the truth lingered just beneath the surface, growing stronger with each memory of his voice, his eyes, the way he made me feel like I wasn't invisible anymore. I'd lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how far this could go. And that terrified me, because I wasn't naive. I knew exactly what line I was approaching, and I knew how hard it would be to turn back once I crossed it. But the more I tried to fight it, the more I found myself pulled toward it. The guilt came in waves. Heavy. Relentless. I'd think about Jake, his kindness, his loyalty, how hard he was working to build something for himself. And here I was, slowly drifting into something with his boss, the one man he looked up to. What kind of mother does that? But then, in quieter moments, I'd think about myself, not as a mother, not as someone's ex-wife, but just as a woman. A woman who had spent years feeling like an afterthought. A woman who had given everything to her marriage, only to be left for someone younger, shinier, newer. A woman who had quietly swallowed every lonely night, every silent dinner, every look in the mirror wondering if she was still beautiful, or if anyone would ever think she was again. Mark made me feel seen. That was the hardest part to ignore. It wasn't just about attraction, though that was definitely there. It was the way he listened. The way he remembered things I said. The way he spoke to me like I mattered, not as someone's mother or someone's ex, but as a person with a mind and a heart and a history worth knowing. And yet, every time I started to let myself enjoy it, even just a little, the shame would come crawling back. I'd imagine Jake finding out. I'd picture the look on his face, confused, betrayed, devastated. I couldn't bear the thought. So I kept everything inside, bottled up behind polite smiles and practiced silences. No one knew what I was carrying. Sometimes I'd find myself staring at my phone, rereading old messages from Mark. Just harmless things. A joke here. Thinking of you there. Nothing inappropriate, not really. But I knew what was happening. I knew the undercurrent. And I knew I wasn't doing anything to stop it. There were moments, quiet, stolen minutes, when I'd close my eyes and let myself imagine what it would be like if things were different. If Mark and I had met under other circumstances. If Jake didn't work for him. If I didn't feel like everything I wanted came with a cost I wasn't sure I could pay. I'd imagine what it would feel like to be held again, not out of duty or habit, but because someone genuinely wanted me. I'd think about what it would be like to laugh without guilt, to wake up next to someone who made me feel desired, respected, understood. And then I'd snap out of it, shame crashing over me like a cold wave. What was I doing? What was I thinking? This wasn't who I was. I wasn't the type to sneak around or betray my son's trust. But the line between who I used to be and who I was becoming, it was getting harder to see. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit on the edge of my bed, my hands shaking, asking myself the same question over and over. Why him? Why now? Of all the people in the world, why did it have to be the one person I should have kept my distance from? The answer, I think, is that loneliness doesn't care about rules. It doesn't care about right and wrong, or what people will think, or who might get hurt. It just aches. Constantly. Quietly. Until someone finally notices. And when that someone looks at you the way Mark looked at me, it becomes harder and harder to walk away. But I hadn't crossed the line yet. Not fully. I still had time. I could still step back. I could pretend none of this happened. Tell Mark it had gone too far. That it wasn't appropriate. That I valued my son's trust more than my own desires. I told myself all of that. Again and again. And still, every time my phone buzzed and his name popped up on the screen, my heart would flutter. And every time I saw him, even from across a room, something inside me lit up like a match. I was caught between guilt and longing, between duty and desire. And I didn't know how much longer I could keep pretending I hadn't already made a choice. It started with a coincidence. At least, that's what I told myself. I was at a coffee shop I'd never been to before, just trying to clear my head. It had been a rough morning, full of thoughts I didn't want to think anymore. The kind where your heart feels heavy for no clear reason, and you just need to be somewhere else, anywhere else. I just sat down with my drink when I looked up, and there he was. Mark. Standing in line, scrolling through his phone like it was just another casual morning. When he saw me, his expression shifted, just slightly surprised, followed by something softer, warmer. He walked over, smiling in that calm, confident way that always made me feel both safe and on edge at the same time. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, his voice smooth and low. "Me neither," I replied, trying not to sound as flustered as I felt. "First time here, actually." "Same," he said, pulling out the chair across from me. "Mind if I sit?" And just like that, we were face to face again. It felt easy. Too easy. We talked like we had the first time about nothing and everything. Books. Movies. His dog. My garden. But underneath the words, the tension simmered. Every smile lasted a second too long. Every glance felt heavier than it should have. I caught myself watching his hands as he stirred his coffee. He noticed. And smiled. After a while, he leaned in, voice quiet. "I was hoping I'd run into you." My breath caught. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't say anything. Just smiled back and sipped my drink, pretending that didn't make my heart stutter in my chest. From that day on, the space between us seemed to shrink. Slowly. Steadily. It started with texts friendly at first. Harmless. A recommendation for a book we'd talked about. A funny photo of his dog with the caption, "Thought this might make you smile." And it did. Every time. Then it shifted. "You looked beautiful the other day," he wrote once. No emojis. No winks. Just those 5 words. Simple. Direct. Impossible to ignore. Another time, after Jake had invited him over for dinner, Mark stayed back a moment after my son went upstairs. He helped me clear the dishes, our hands brushing in the kitchen, eyes meeting over the sound of running water. "This was nice," he said quietly. "Being here. With you." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. My throat felt tight. He never overstepped. Not openly. But every gesture, every look, every small moment felt like a thread being pulled tighter between us. And Jake, God, Jake. He was so proud. Always talking about how Mark was mentoring him, how lucky he felt to have someone like that in his corner. "He's the reason I'm being considered for that new project," he told me one evening, eyes bright. "Mark says I've got real potential." I smiled, nodded, told him how proud I was. And inside, I felt like I was drowning. Because every time Jake praised him, it made what I was feeling worse. Mark wasn't just a man anymore. He was part of my son's future. His success. His confidence. And I was tangled in something that could ruin all of it. Still, I kept seeing him. Quietly. Carefully. Never alone in obvious ways. But enough. Enough to keep feeding the fire I was trying to pretend didn't exist. Then one afternoon, Mark texted me while I was at the grocery store. "Can we talk?" "In private." "It's about Jake. Something important." My hands went cold reading it. I stared at the screen for a long time, my mind racing. Why now? Why privately? Did something happen at work? Was Jake in trouble? Or was this just an excuse? I replied, when and where? He suggested his office after hours. Said no one else would be there. I stared at those words for what felt like forever. My instincts were tangled, half of me screaming to back away, the other half already craving whatever came next. That evening, I stood outside his building, my hands shaking as I waited by the door he told me to use. He opened it himself, wearing a soft gray shirt, sleeves rolled up. His expression was unreadable. Serious, but not cold. "Thanks for coming," he said, stepping aside. I walked in, my heart pounding. The office was quiet, desks empty, lights dimmed. It felt strange seeing the place without the usual noise, without people bustling around. It felt intimate. Private. Too private. He led me to a smaller room off the main floor. Glass walls. Soft lighting. A couch in the corner. The kind of space meant for one-on-one meetings, for conversations that weren't meant to be overheard. I sat down slowly, my nerves on edge. "So, what's going on? Is Jake okay?" Mark nodded, then paused. "Jake's fine. Better than fine, actually. He's up for a big promotion. And I wanted to talk to you about it, because I know how much it would mean to him." I exhaled, relief rushing through me. "That's wonderful," I said. "He's worked so hard." Mark smiled faintly. "He has. He's earned it. But that's not the only reason I asked you here." The room fell silent. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. He moved a little closer, not touching me, but near enough that the air between us shifted. "I needed to see you. Without pretending. Without the masks we wear when he's around." My mouth went dry. "Angela," he said, softly but firmly, "I think about you. More than I should. And I know the timing is wrong, the situation is complicated, but I can't keep pretending this doesn't mean something." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just sat there, torn wide open. Caught between the part of me that wanted to run and the part that wanted nothing more than to let go. To finally stop pretending. And then he reached out, slowly, carefully, and brushed his fingers against mine. "I'm not asking you for anything," he said. "Not tonight. Not anything you're not ready for. But I need to know, do you feel it too?" I looked at him, my throat tight, every muscle in my body frozen. And in that moment, I realized I'd already answered that question. Long before tonight. I just didn't know what the cost would be. Not yet. I don't know how long I sat there, my fingers tangled with his, the silence between us heavy and trembling. Mark didn't push. He didn't lean in further. He just sat there, watching me, waiting for the answer I hadn't spoken, but had already lived. "I feel it," I whispered, finally. My voice came out soft and raw, like it had been buried for a long time and only now remembered how to speak. "I've been trying not to. Every day I try to pretend it's not there. But it is. And it's not going away." Mark closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling slowly, as if hearing those words released something he'd been holding in for too long. When he opened them again, his expression had changed, still tender, but more vulnerable now, like something inside him had cracked open. "I'm not good at this," he said quietly. "I've made mistakes. A lot of them. My marriage fell apart because I stopped trying. I got too used to living like I didn't need anyone. But then you showed up. You were just supposed to be Jake's mother, and instead, you became this thing I couldn't stop thinking about. This light, this presence that reminded me I was still human. Still capable of feeling something real." I didn't speak. Couldn't. The lump in my throat was too big, the ache in my chest too deep. He continued, his voice lowering into something almost pained. "I wake up thinking about you. I look for excuses just to see you, hear your voice. I try to keep it professional, for Jake's sake, for yours. But it's eating me alive. I can't keep doing this halfway." My eyes burned. I looked down at our hands, his thumb gently brushing against my knuckles, and I wanted to pull away, but I didn't. "I'm scared," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't know what this is. I don't know what happens if we cross that line. If Jake finds out, I could lose him. Mark nodded, his expression serious, full of regret and longing all at once. I know. And I wouldn't blame you if you walked away. But you deserve to feel alive again, Angela. You deserve something that's yours. Not borrowed. Not broken. He reached up slowly, cautiously, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered just a second too long on my cheek. I closed my eyes. I should have moved. I should have said no. But I didn't. In that quiet, heart-wrenching moment, the part of me that had been starving for connection finally gave in. I leaned forward, just enough for our foreheads to touch. Just enough for the breath between us to tangle. Then his lips met mine. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't wild. It was gentle, tender. A whisper of a kiss, so brief it could have been missed, but so full of meaning it left me breathless. When we pulled apart, I couldn't look at him. The weight of what had just happened crashed down instantly. My stomach turned, and every cell in my body screamed with guilt. I stood up, stumbling slightly, backing away as if distance could undo what had just been done. I shouldn't have come, I said, my voice shaking. I shouldn't have, God. What did I just do? Mark stood too, his face pale but calm. He didn't try to stop me. He didn't chase me. He just looked at me with a kind of quiet heartbreak. You don't have to run from this, he said softly. I betrayed him, I snapped, hugging my arms to my chest. I betrayed my own son. For what? For one moment of weakness. Mark took a step forward, but kept his distance. It wasn't weakness, Angela. It was truth. Maybe ugly, maybe messy, but real. I shook my head, backing toward the door. My mind was spinning. Jake's face flashed before my eyes. His laughter. His trust. All of it, now tainted by this thing I couldn't undo. Mark's voice stopped me just as I reached the door. Calm, steady, but soaked in finality. We can't pretend this didn't happen. I froze. Those words hung in the air like smoke, clinging to everything. I turned the handle, walked out, and didn't look back. But his words followed me. All the way home. All through the night. We can't pretend this didn't happen. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jake's face. Smiling, innocent, trusting, and then it would twist into something else, confused, hurt, betrayed. My mind kept replaying the kiss over and over, like some cruel loop I couldn't escape. I kept hearing Mark's voice, we can't pretend this didn't happen. But I wanted to pretend. I wanted to shove it so far down into myself that it couldn't breathe. I wanted to wake up and go back to being just a mother, just someone who never crossed a line. But the truth wouldn't let me. The next morning, Jake came downstairs like any other day, messy hair, coffee mug in hand, scrolling through his phone. I smiled at him, trying to look normal, but I could already feel the shift. The space between us. My guilt was too loud. It changed the air around me. Made it harder to breathe. Morning, he said, not looking up. Morning, I replied, my voice too soft. Too careful. He looked up at me then, squinting. You okay? I nodded too quickly. Yeah, just tired. He nodded and turned back to his phone. And just like that, the moment passed. But it didn't feel right. It felt like he knew something. Like maybe somehow, he could feel it too. That something between us had shifted. All day I tried to keep busy. Laundry, cleaning, grocery list. Anything to keep my mind from going back to that room, to that kiss, to the way Mark's eyes had looked when I turned away from him. But no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the weight pressing down on me. And it wasn't just guilt, it was fear. Fear that Mark might say something. Fear that Jake would notice how strange I'd become. Fear that somehow, some way, the truth would crawl out of me when I wasn't paying attention. That evening, Jake was quiet. Not in a dramatic way, just off. Distracted. Like he was thinking about something. I watched him carefully, every movement, every pause, reading too much into everything. You sure everything's okay? I asked, trying to sound casual. He looked up, almost startled. Yeah. Why? You've just been kind of quiet. He shrugged. Long day. I nodded, pretending that answer satisfied me. But inside, I was spiraling. Every silence felt suspicious. Every glance felt like a test. The next few days were worse. My anxiety started to live under my skin. I could feel it pulsing there, humming through my chest. Every time my phone buzzed, I panicked it would be Mark. And when it was him, I didn't answer. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to face him again. I wasn't ready to hear his voice and feel all of it flood back into me. I kept telling myself I had to let it die, that whatever we'd started couldn't go any further. But even while I ignored his messages, I found myself checking my phone constantly. Hoping, dreading, waiting. Then, one night, Jake came home later than usual. He was tense. I could see it in the way he dropped his keys, the way he exhaled too loudly as he sat on the couch. "You okay?" I asked, heart hammering. He stared at the floor for a moment before answering. "Just weird energy at work today." My stomach flipped. "Weird how?" He shook his head. "I don't know. Mark was kind of off. Normally he's really chill, but today he barely looked at me. It was like something was wrong, and I couldn't figure out what. I felt like I was going to be sick." I forced a casual tone. "Maybe he's just dealing with something personal." Jake nodded, distracted. "Yeah, maybe." Still felt weird, though. He's not usually like that. And then, quietly, almost like he didn't want to say it, "You haven't seen him or anything lately, have you?" I froze. The question hung there like a trap. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. No, I lied. Why would I?" He shrugged quickly, brushing it off. "Just wondering. You two seemed kind of familiar at that dinner." My skin prickled. "Oh!" "No," I said, trying to laugh. He was just being polite. Jake didn't say anything. He just looked at me for a moment. Too long, and then nodded slowly. "Yeah, probably." After he went upstairs, I sat alone in the quiet, the weight of everything pressing in on me. It felt like I was walking a thin wire, one wrong word away from falling completely. And the thing that scared me most? I wasn't even sure I wanted to stay balanced. Every part of me was exhausted from pretending, from burying what I felt, from living in a lie I'd helped create. But the thought of losing Jake, of seeing the light go out in his eyes because of me, that was the part one couldn't live with. So I stayed silent. I deleted Mark's messages. I avoided his calls. I smiled when Jake talked, even when it broke me. I told myself I was protecting him, protecting everyone. But the truth was, I wasn't protecting anything. I was just waiting. Waiting for the moment everything came crashing down. Because deep down I knew, it wasn't a matter of if. It was when. Some nights, I lie in bed with the lights off, staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of woman I've become. It's a quiet kind of torment, the kind that wraps itself around you slowly, until it's part of your breath, your bones, the way you move through the day. I smile, I cook dinner, I ask Jake about work, and all the while I'm carrying this thing inside me. This secret that sits like a stone on my chest, heavy and unmoving. I never set out to be this person. I didn't wake up one day and decide to betray my own son. But somehow, in a series of small, almost invisible steps, I crossed a line. One conversation, one touch, one kiss. And now I'm standing in the wreckage of choices I made quietly, privately, and cowardly. And what eats at me the most, what won't let me sleep, is that for a moment, a brief, fleeting moment, it felt good. That's the part one hate myself for. The part one can't forgive. Because it wasn't just a mistake. It was a moment where I let myself believe I deserved something. Something warm. Something human. After years of being overlooked, discarded, left behind by a man who traded me in for a newer version of the life we built together, I wanted to feel like I mattered. Mark made me feel that. He looked at me like I was still someone worth seeing. Someone worth choosing. And I fell into it, not because I didn't know better, but because I was starving for it. For affection. For acknowledgement. For something that was mine. But how do you hold on to something like that when the cost is your own child's trust? Every time Jake looks at me now, I feel like I'm lying to him with my eyes. He doesn't know, and yet, sometimes I think he feels it. Like some part of him is starting to sense the shift, the distance I keep trying to deny. I've caught myself thinking about telling him, sitting him down, laying it all out, the truth, the shame, everything. I imagine myself doing it over and over. His face, the pause, the silence after the words land. And I always stop there, because I don't know what happens after that silence. I don't know if he forgives me, or if I watch him walk away and never come back. He's all I have left. After the divorce, after losing half of what I thought was permanent, Jake was the one constant that kept me grounded. He was the reason I got up in the morning, the reason I didn't completely collapse. And now I'm holding a match to that bond with one trembling hand, afraid that even breathing too hard will set it ablaze. So I keep quiet. I carry it in silence, and it's killing me. I look at myself in the mirror, and I don't recognize the woman staring back. She has lines around her eyes from years of worry. She has sadness tucked behind her smile. And now, she has secrets. Sometimes I catch glimpses of the old me, the version who believed in doing the right thing, in protecting her family at all costs, in being a good mother above all else. And then I remember that kiss, that room, that night, and the guilt comes rushing back like a wave that never stops crashing. I ask myself, do I deserve happiness if it means hurting someone I love? Do I keep living a lie for the sake of keeping things intact? Or do I tell the truth and risk destroying what little peace we have left? There's no answer. No clean resolution. Just this ongoing ache. This constant push and pull between what I want and what I owe. And the worst part is knowing that no matter what I choose, I lose something. If I stay silent, I keep my son, but I lose myself. If I confess, maybe I reclaim some part of my soul, but I might lose the only person who's ever truly needed me. I don't know how to live with either version. So I keep moving, day by day, moment by moment, smiling when I need to, laughing when it's expected. And inside, I carry the weight, quietly, carefully, but it grows heavier with every heartbeat. And I don't know how much longer I can hold it. If you've ever found yourself caught in that space between loyalty and desire, if you've ever loved someone so deeply and still found yourself wanting something or someone you knew you shouldn't, then maybe you'll understand what I'm going through. Because I don't know what's right anymore. I don't know if silence is protection or betrayal. I don't know if confessing is bravery or selfishness. All I know is that I'm torn, split right down the middle, between the mother I've always tried to be and the woman I forgot I still am. So I need to ask, honestly, from the heart, have you ever faced something like this? Have you ever looked at the people you love and realized you've been lying to them with your silence? Have you ever been so desperate to feel alive again that you crossed a line you never thought you would? If you have, I'm listening, because I don't have the answers. And I don't know what comes next. But maybe one of you does. Please share your thoughts below. Your stories. Your regrets. Your lessons. I need them. I think we all do. And if you found yourself holding your breath through this story, if it stirred something in you, even something painful, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. There are more stories like this. And sometimes, hearing someone else's truth can help you face your own. I've learned something through all of this, something I wish I'd understood sooner. Loneliness is quiet, but it's dangerous. It doesn't scream or beg for attention, it waits. It waits for the moment when your guard is down, when you're vulnerable, when you're just tired enough to reach for something warm. And if you're not careful, it becomes your compass, your excuse, your ruin. I didn't set out to hurt anyone, but pain has a way of multiplying when you try to hide it. I tried to bury my emptiness. And in doing that, I stepped into something I can't undo. I've also realized how powerful emotional wounds can be, especially the ones we carry in silence. They fester, they cloud your judgment, and if you don't face them, they'll lead you to decisions you never thought you were capable of. I still haven't told Jake. I don't know if I ever will. Sometimes I rehearse the words in my head, imagining his reaction, his silence, his disappointment. Other times, I convince myself I'm protecting him by keeping it buried. But the truth is, whether I speak it or not, it's already changed everything. It's changed me. And maybe that's the most painful part. Because in moments of weakness, we realize who we truly are. Perhaps too late.